Texas and Clemson are set to do battle in Austin in the first round of the college football playoff. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game between the Longhorns and the Tigers. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Dave Shumate. He is Cole Thompson. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. This segment brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com, use promo code SECU at sign up to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 or more lineup. That's prizepicks.com, promo code SECU to get your $50 bonus today. The college football playoff is upon us, and the first round takes us to Austin, Texas, as the Texas Longhorns and Clemson Tigers do battle in the first round. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game. I am Chris Phillips. Helping me do so, my good friends Dave Shumate and Cole Thompson join me once again. Gentlemen, appreciate you taking the time and excited to break down this college football playoff battle with you.
Yeah, another first for Texas, huh? They joined the league, SEC for the first year, hosting a playoff for the first time, obviously in the first 12-team playoff where we can host these games on campus. Got a lot of Austin connections across the board that we've discussed here. Obviously, Cade Klubnik, Andrew Bakubo. We got a bunch of connections here. I think we got it'll be an interesting because who has a little bit more of the matchup scheme here? We got Garrett Riley, we got Dabo Sweeney, we got Pete Kwiatkowski, we got Steve Sarkisian. Always looking at the matchups in these playoff games. This is the one I'm probably a little more confident in. We'll get to a prediction later, but I do like where certain team stands in this one. But overall, I'm pretty fired up about this matchup. A lot of good logo game here, specifically here in the last 10 to 15 years.
Cade Klubnik won the battle when he was at Westlake over Quinn Ewers at South Lake Carroll. Does he win the war? That's all that we're excited about. This is going to be a matchup of all matchups. This is one that I think you get to see the true version of Texas. You get to see a hopefully revamped version of Clemson. And it may have a ton of overall expectations that are met or underwhelming results. In fact, boys, I'm going to let you know a little secret. I think that this game goes exactly how one game happened for one of these teams earlier in the season. So if that gives you any indication on how this game is going to end, you kind of can figure out who's going to come out on top.
Guys, kickoff set for this Saturday, December the 21st, a 3 p.m. Central Time local kick being aired on TNT, by the way. I do not know who's calling this game, but TNT will be carrying it. The game, of course, in Austin, Texas at Darrell K. Royal, Texas Memorial Stadium. That place will be jam-packed to the brim, will be as loud as it's been all season long. Guys, Texas is an 11.5-point favorite in this football game. The over-under is set at 51.5. And these two teams, they never met before. So this will be the first time ever that Texas and Clemson have done battle on the gridiron. Guys, as you mentioned, let's go ahead and dive into this game. The connections, if you will, and you guys have already mentioned it. Cade Klubnik, reigning from Austin. They showed his reaction, right, when they paired up Texas and Clemson, and he was obviously fired up. The cowboy hat is sitting in his locker. He gets to return home. And Cole, you just mentioned, do battle with Quinn Ewers. Also, Andrew Bakubo, who came over from Clemson, is now on the Texas roster. So there's a lot of familiarity here. I think that makes for a really intriguing matchup, just all things considered. And guys, I don't really got to spend a whole lot of time hyping this thing up, right? It's the first round of the college football playoff. Texas, like you mentioned, first time for them, first time for all of us. This is the first college football playoff game that the SEC has participated in. We obviously have one on Friday and then earlier that day on Saturday, but first one for the SEC, an SEC-ACC matchup. Again, I could sit here and build this thing up with the dramatics and the dynamics of the game, but boys, the college football playoff is here, man. Texas, their goal before the season, win a national championship. That quest starts. You try to bounce back from the loss to Georgia in the SEC title. Only team that's beaten Texas, the Georgia Bulldogs. That's the good news. You're not playing Georgia this weekend. And then for Clemson, guys, do they seize the opportunity? I mean, Dabo Sweeney and company, who, again, fell to a couple SEC foes this year, Georgia, South Carolina, fell to Louisville, still made the SEC title. A lot of people feel like they backed their way into the college football playoff, beating SMU in the final seconds in the ACC title. But it doesn't matter, I suppose. You're in the playoff. You got just as good a chance as anybody to make a run. So a lot of different dynamics, even just outside the field of play in this one. But certainly that Austin to Clemson connection that I think many of us didn't really realize existed, that'll be on full display in this game this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, you throw in Garrett Riley, offensive coordinator, has a Texas connection. I mean, the mayor over here, he's from Texas. There's a lot of Lone Star connections in this matchup right here. I'll be interested to see. I know we're talking a little bit down the line here. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I think Wes Godwin going against Steve Sarkisian, Kyle Flood, AJ Milwee, and them will be interesting there. Can the Texas offensive line, who again, I mean, they're a Joe Moore award, but I think sometimes, even myself included, we all get a little like, hey, man, they've struggled a little bit. But really, outside of Texas, though, that offensive line for Texas, outside of the Georgia game, that offensive line for Texas has played pretty well this year. They've been nicked up a little bit. Has it been great? No. Again, I think Kelvin Banks has kind of had in the two money type games. And again, he's going to get his money. But against Georgia, I think he struggled in a little bit. Clemson, Peter Woods, and them can give some looks that could cause some issues for Texas. I'm interested on that one as well. A lot of key matchups, a lot of good football coaches in this game. That's where I'm kind of looking forward to. This and probably the game we're going to preview after this is probably the most two I'm fired up from just the overall matchups here in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, Cade Klubnik has been playing lights out. I mean, he did have the interception against South Carolina, but he has a 15 touchdown to 2 interception ratio since that really god-awful offensive performance against Louisville. He led his team to an ACC title. They started out fast against SMU. They put themselves in a great situation to where they kind of left no doubt of being a team that was good enough to hold its own in the college football playoff. With that being said, this is going to be the best defense that they have faced probably all year, besides maybe South Carolina, because of even you could say that Georgia defense that they saw in week 1 has drastically changed since that moment. But this is a team that can get after a quarterback. This is a team that leads the SEC in tackles for losses. This is a team that is number 2 in sacks behind only Ole Miss. This is a team that has multiple playmakers, whether that be Andrew Makuba, whether that be Trey Moore, whether that be Ethan Burke, whether that be Colin Simmons as a simple pass rusher, Anthony Hill that can make plays behind the line of scrimmage, what you have in David Bendo, what you have in Vernon Broughton, what you have in depth pieces on the defensive line. That is all going to come after a quarterback. And we have seen at times this year Clemson's offensive identity be pedestrian because of the offensive line. If they're not at full speed, if they're not at full health, they can't start off a game humming at the right tune. This could be a very long day. This is one of those games to where you're excited to see how it unfolds, but it does feel like it's going to come down to one of two things. Either a complete and total dominated blowout by Texas in its own backyard, or a 4-quarter battle that eventually leads to special teams making a big-time play.
And guys, I look at both running games in this football game. Trey Wisner, the way he's come on of late, obviously, I mean, who can forget that game against Texas A&M end of season, over 30 carries, over 180, I believe, rushing yards. Obviously, it was more difficult to run the football against a Georgia front. I think Clemson's front, you know, you think of Clemson and you think dominant defensive fronts, but guys, I don't know if you realize Clemson's ranked outside of the top 70 in rushing defense. So I think establishing the run, taking some of that pressure off of Quinn Ewers, and on the other side for Clemson, what's the status of Phil Maffa? I think he's going to go. I think he'd have to, you know, I don't think there's anything probably could keep him out of the game, but he's been dealing with a nagging shoulder injury. You know, I think for both of these quarterbacks, I especially look at the Texas side, establishing a run game. That's when they've been at their best, when they're able to run the football. So, guys, I mean, running game is going to go a long way. I know that's kind of a low-hanging fruit, something obvious to say, but running game is going to go a long way. That battle of Trey Wisner, Phil Maffa, who's able to scheme it up better and open up some things for their passing game, getting the running game going.
No, I think you're right, Chris. It seems like Texas, when they've committed to it outside of the 2 Georgia games, have been able to run the football on teams. They get away from it. And it's not just a Texas thing. I think at times these coaches all get ahead of themselves a little bit and try to dial up the perfect play. And it's like, I mean, dude, you're averaging 3.5, 4 yards a carry. You do the math. That's going to move the 6 for us down the line. Again, I'm not saying run it 3 straight times, but let's stay ahead of the chains a little bit. I also think something we briefly mentioned, I honestly, every game comes down to turnovers. Let's be honest. But both these teams are really good at taking away. Texas tied for first, actually, with 28, with Notre Dame there, another playoff team. And yet Clemson sitting there at 8th with 25 taken away. And we've seen both these guys both these offenses can turn the football over at times. I think penalties, turnovers will be key in this one. I think in these playoff games, just general, we don't really talk about we talk about teams from a penalty standpoint, where they rank nationally, where they rank in their conference, but just how big a momentum plays will those be? Like, hey, you pick up a first down. Oh, wait, holding call back. We're backing it up. Now it's 2nd and 12. Oh, he throws a pick the next play when it could have been a first down there in the red zone. Totally changes the dynamics of this game. I think in the playoffs, with these being on someone else's home field and having those advantages, I think that could be key. Turnovers, I think, are going to be massive in this game, specifically because both these defenses come in being really good at takeaways.
I think you also have to start fast if you're Clemson. That to me is going to be a really big selling point in this game because you go back and look at how they faced off against SMU. SMU was down by 17 and they brought it to a 4-quarter must have a game-winning field goal by a freshman from Charlotte to make a big-time play. I look at this Clemson offense. They were able to jump out to a 21-7 lead after the first quarter. Bryant Wesco has been truly one of the more underrated freshmen in college football this past year. But I want to see somebody else step on up. Is it going to be Antonio Williams? Is it going to be TJ Moore? That was another high-profile pick coming out last season in the 2024 recruiting class. They believe a lot in the future of what this organization can be offensively. What I think is going to be really important is if you can stop the passing attack for Clemson, you're going to have to be able to contain the run. But you also got to factor in that Cade Klubnik's legs have been a critical element to his success. They got the win over Pitt because if he rushed in for that touchdown. They got the lead over South Carolina in the Palmetto Bowl because if he had both of the rushing touchdowns. In fact, he led the team in scoring, and he was the only person that could. So it's more than just preparing for Phil Maffa. It's the fact that you're going to have to keep a guy like Klubnik inside the box. You can't allow him to work to the outside containment where a defensive tackle is going to be 7 steps behind trying to make a play, where now you're trusting a defensive back to be able to get that stop. And instead of a loss for 3, it's a gain of 7. That's going to be really interesting in this game. I think that how Clemson dictates its first 3 drives might eventually tell us a good indication about where this offense is going to go for the afternoon.
And I think, Cole, too, you mentioned starting fast. You know, if you're Texas, taking advantage of the early opportunities, I think, is going to be really important because I think most Longhorn fans feel like they should have won that SEC title. They outplayed Georgia. Again, being there in person, watching, they did. They dominated the first half, and you look up and you say, oh, no, it's 6-3. Like, you can't have another situation like that. This is a game where, again, you're a double-digit point favorite. You're expected to win. If you have the opportunity to put the foot on the throat and suffocate them and put them out of it early, you need to do that because the longer you let a Clemson hang around, and they got their own issues. Listen, I mean, I kind of would love to get you guys' thoughts, your feelings on, you know, what we saw second half of the ACC title. They still won the game, but a lot to be concerned with there. You feel like how they kind of just put it into cruise control. But if you're Texas, I agree with you, Cole. Starting fast for Clemson's important, but if you're Texas, being able to put them out of the game early when you have the opportunity, do against them what you couldn't do against Georgia. Because, again, the longer you let Clemson hang around, I know they haven't been in the playoff in a bit, but this is not a position where Dabo Swinney and company, they're not unfamiliar with this spot. They've won national championships. They've been in big games. So, you know, I will be very concerned from the Texas standpoint if we see another situation where you're outplaying the opponent for the first 30 minutes and you have a 3-point margin lead. You need to, I think, capitalize, convert, put them away early if you can.
Two things here. It is Godwin's first playoff. I'll say that. The last time they were in the playoffs.
It is Godwin's. There's a lot of guys on that Clemson team where it's their first playoff. Yeah.
And then another thing, I saw Sark said, and he's exactly right. I mean, we're all accustomed, even with the 14 playoff, certainly when it was the BCS era, the layoff is long now. And that can be a good thing because we see sometimes those playoff games, those national championship games, when it was just 1 versus 2 for all the marbles, it would come off and be sloppy a little bit because the conditioning hadn't been there. People are off, 65, 70 days. That's not the case now. It's been about 2 weeks. So that'll be good. I'm sure in ways coaches will like that. Like teams like Sark, I'm sure last week gave Isaiah Bond, Kelvin Banks, Quinn Ewers and them they were just living in the training room, getting ready. But 2 weeks is plenty of time to get ready, especially if you don't have a season-ending injury. So I bet some of these coaches are like, all right, obviously doing the whole portal signing day thing sucks in the middle of this, but you know what? Like we have to worry about our team staying focused for a whole month because we're dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds. The attention span for that long, to try to hold them to attention for a month, 65, 70 days, and again with the 14 playoff, it wasn't that, but it is a significant decrease to only being 2 weeks where we're accustomed to seeing it being 3 to 4.
The thing that was going to be really interesting is that you guys talk about Texas being able to get those takeaways, being able to create those opportunities early on in the game. It also perplexes over to the offensive side of the football. You have to be able to find a way into the end zone because the fear that I have, and I get a lot of flack for this whenever it comes to Quinn Ewers because they think that I'm crapping on Quinn. I'm not. I'm just calling it as is. Texas had 2 horrendous turnovers in the red zone against Texas A&M. The big pick 6 by Will Lee and the fumble. In a game like this, I'm not saying that Clemson's going to be able to put up extensive points and they're going to be able to come back down 17. What I am saying is you can only ask your defense to do so much. And this is an elite defense. For my money, this is the best defense in the college football playoff. And I'll die on that take. I love everything that they have, from its secondary to its pass rushers to everyone understanding their certain assignment. But it also has to end with 6 points in the end zone. It can't just be settling for a hopeful Burt Auburn field goal, which at this point isn't a guarantee anymore. So when you look at what Texas is going to have to do, when you get a turnover by Jahdae Barron or a turnover by Michael Taft or a strip sack by Trey Moore, you got to punch it in. You got to trust that Quinn is going to be able to find the right targets, whether that be DeAndre Moore, Gunnar Helm. You can even throw in Ryan Wingo in a limited capacity. Whatever it is, I think that this is going to have to also be a tone setter for Texas, because the last thing I want to see is Quinn have a turnover right after Cade Klubnik has a turnover, or they get a critical 4th down stop and they're pinned deep inside their own 15. They get the ball at midfield and it leads to a Burt Auburn field goal attempt that goes wide left. That's going to, I really think, be such an underlying tone in this game, because for Texas, they kind of want to show the world, yeah, we get it. We lost to Georgia, but you guys all told us that Georgia was the standard of college football. You guys all told us that Georgia was the pinnacle of this sport, and that's all we lost to. But if you allow a team like Clemson to hang around, a Clemson team that also played Georgia, and for the first half looked very similar to you in Atlanta, kept it interesting, kept it close, and then they turn on the Jets. You don't want to see a team like Clemson be able to do that with their experience that Dabo Swinney has had in the playoff. It eventually comes back and ends up benefiting Clemson because of Texas's offense isn't capitalizing on those turnovers.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting if Sark changes his. I think he may go for it a little bit more if it's a 40-plus field goal.
I think that
you may be a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah,
with
Burt Auburn's been
I think
bad.
this year, if it's in the 20, it's from 20 to 30. I mean, just don't be dumb here. If you don't trust him kicking a 20 to 30-yard field goal, he shouldn't be out there. Like at that point, you still got to take your points there. I think it gets over that 40 range, though. You start having legit conversations like – I don't know, dude. We don't. This guy. No offense, Burt. We have trust in you, but unless it's.
I think if it gets over 35 and it's like 4th and 3 or less, they might consider.
Unless it's the end of the game or something.
Hey, you guys said 4th and 3 or less. You got to go to Arch. There has to be a game plan for Arch Manning in this.
Yeah. How much Arch do we see?
There has to be a game plan for Arch Manning in this.
Yeah, you didn't see a lot against Georgia the second.
You saw one play, and I think one drive. Honestly, one drive could be the difference in this game. Just going from 3 to 16, changing up the offense, catching the defense slipping, putting up points. I feel like that has to be a game plan in here where Arch comes in.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's win or go home, obviously. So I think what you got, both these sides are going to throw the kitchen sink at each other. You mentioned though, Cole, the thing that scares me a little bit from the Texas perspective, and this isn't me poo-pooing on Quinn either, but guys, the turnover is going to come, right? I mean, Quinn Ewers is going to turn the football. There's going to be at least one. That's what scares me is like, I feel like he's been bailed out by the defense a good bit. It's like, what if they're not able to? And I love this defense too, Cole. I think it's the best defense in the country. I really do. I would also die on that take, but it just scares me that, like, if you tell me Quinn Ewers, and maybe this is kind of obvious, but if he plays a clean football game, doesn't turn it over, Texas is going to cruise. I don't have any doubt about that.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, Chris. I think if you get Quinn Ewers from Kentucky, Arkansas to Florida, and I know people are going to make, well, Florida's playing with a backup quarterback. I mean, the backup quarterback.
But Quinn was great in that game.
Yeah, and Florida's defense was underrated at that point. I just think you're right. That 3-week stretch, if he can just play like that, it wasn't like
just be efficient. Just be efficient.
Just be efficient. I mean, had 0 turnovers.
And it's not. I'll say this: it's not all his fault. It's really not. Quinn gets. Every quarterback gets too much of the credit, too much of the blame. Quinn Ewers is just the epitome of that. He gets a lot of blame, it seems, from people in, around, and even outside the Texas program. And you had the one ball, what is it, batted up or whatever. The receiver tips it up. Georgia picks it up. Like, he's had stuff like that happen, but you have to avoid the turnovers. And, guys, but it feels like I can bank on a turnover or two from Quinn Ewers. I can in this game. And you just, if Clemson's able to take it, if it happens on, to Cole, your point, the wrong side of the field. I mean, again, against Texas A&M, it didn't cost you because they literally couldn't get in the end zone offensively. But in a game like this, those 1 or 2 turnovers, that might be the difference. So,
but it also could be the difference if Cade Klubnik is the one having the turnover.
Right, for sure.
That's a big deal, especially with Andrew Makuba wanting to play for that rivalry matchup and the redemption to be able to say, I made the right call for me leaving your program to come down to Austin and come back home.
Who do y'all think has again, I'm about to ask a question about a team we're not doing this preview on, not even early. Who do y'all think in the playoff comes in with like the least to lose? Obviously, I think SMU's in that conversation. Y'all think Clemson's the next team after them? That's kind of just like comes in. It's kind of like no one expects a lot out of them. Like, are they that next team or is it Arizona State in y'all's opinion? I think SMU takes the cake on that.
I think it's he doesn't expect a lot. I think it's Indiana. I think people are just like Indiana.
That's fair. Yeah, Indiana would be in that conversation too.
You didn't win your one ranked matchup, and you got blown out because of inadequate special teams. And
I haven't really seen anybody pick Indiana to beat. Now, granted, I hadn't seen a lot of people picking Clemson to beat Texas either. Clemson. I feel like if I'm Dabo, I mean, you literally come in. People think we got in because of the rules of the system, boys. Really,
well, you think it's true,
but it is. I mean, you could go do some total Kirby Smart propaganda in there. Again, I don't know if that overly feeds well, but no, I mean, I think this is the type of game where I've heard people who've talked to Garrett Riley that are pretty close to him say he vents his frustration all the time in that building why they don't go get in the portal and dabble a little bit. This is that game, I think, from a skill standpoint where you're like, yeah, if we really want to go win this thing, Dabo, win the whole thing, we need to start dabbling in the transfer portal a little bit.
I will say, if you just trust Nolan Hauser to go ahead and make a field goal, I promise you there's going to be at least more benefit on your side than there will be on Texas's side. Because I'm not seeing many freshmen come on in and drill a 56-yard field goal to guarantee his team a conference champion and a berth in the college football playoff. And you're not getting that in Austin for damn sure. So this becomes a field goal game. Clemson may actually have a shot.
Yeah, hanging out with our friends from Austin in Atlanta, the way they talked about Bert Auburn, they don't want this one to come down to a field goal. I can put it to you that way. They have no interest in that. Guys, let's go ahead and lock in some predictions, lock in some picks for this one. Texas and Clemson in the first round of the college football playoff there in Austin. Dave, we're going to start with you, and then I'll go, and we'll let the fellow Texan go last and Cole Thompson. Dave, how do you see this one playing out, Longhorns and Tigers at DKR?
This is one, like I said a little bit at the beginning, previewing it. I feel pretty confident in this prediction in the college football playoffs. I just don't think it's an overall great matchup for Clemson. Again, like take away the road game, whatever. At least Clemson will get to see their intro video be played.
So weird, by the way. People,
very NCAA tournament regional vibes.
Side note, yeah. People are about to find out what folks have been dealing with in college baseball for years. I don't know if y'all realize that, but when you host a regional, you're hosting it, but it's an NCAA sanctioned event essentially, to where weird. Everybody's walk up and everybody's intro, and it's treated as a neutral site, which for football, that's going to be odd. That's going to be very odd.
That's strange. But no, I think in this game, I think it just comes down to, I just don't know how much offense outside of what Cole bringing up, which could happen. Quinn Ewers gives them short field. I don't see them having a lot of production against this Texas defense. I just don't. I think Texas has been solid all year. I mean, let's be honest. What was probably their worst defensive performance this year? If we want to be completely honest, I'm asking. I'm open to this conversation. What is the worst defensive performance they've had all year? Now somebody could counter that, and I think it's fair. Have they played a ton of great offenses? I think that's fair too. But for the sake of this specific question, worst performance from the Texas defense this year. I mean, what would y'all say? I mean, they didn't lose the game on defense twice against Georgia because of the defense. I mean, I'm legitimately asking. I mean, what do y'all think is the worst? They hadn't had one.
I say
they haven't just had
one.
No, I don't think they've had one. So I'm just going to go with history tells me. I think they come up, show out. We know they may be the side of the ball out of the entire all the 12 teams that I feel like I can trust week to week to be like, hey, I know what I'm going to get. Now it's going to be challenging with a better offense, but I think they have a big advantage there. I don't think Phil Moffitt's really going to get it going. I think that Clemson offensive line, from talking to people that are close to Matt Luke, they're pretty banged up. Again, maybe these 2 weeks have kind of helped them out. Again, I know they were banged up going into the South Carolina game. They didn't feel good about that South Carolina front against them. I think it's kind of the same with Texas, with Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins, and them, Cole Mitch and Trey Burke. I think Quinn Ewers plays well. Again, am I going to say he's going to put up five touchdowns, 0 interceptions? No. I think it's going to be closer to what we saw with him against Arkansas, Florida, and Kentucky. It's an efficient performance. I do think we see some of the arch there in the red zone. I think Texas is I think this game will be close at half, closer than people think at half. But I think Texas ultimately separates, wins the game. Let's call it 33-17. I don't want to say it's just a total roll the ball out. It's a butt kicking, but I do think Texas controls this game. I think it may be one of those things where we're talking at half like, here comes Texas. Feels like they dominated the first half. They're going to let Georgia come out, let Clemson come out and kind of take the game in the second half. I don't think that happens. I think this is a good matchup for Texas. We've talked about it since they've announced the playoffs. I think Texas matchup-wise, when you look at their path, has the best path of any SEC team just from a matchup offense versus opposing team defense, their offense versus an opposing team's offense, defense, vice versa. But I think Texas gets this win 33-17. I feel pretty confident in this pick. I like Texas across the board here.
Yeah, Dave, I think to your point, when you look at the matchups, I think there are some mismatches in this one. I look at Texas's front seven against the Clemson offensive line, a Clemson offensive line that I thought played a little bit better than I expected against South Carolina, which is one of the best defensive fronts in the country. I mean, I thought they did a pretty good job, all things considered, of keeping Cade Klubnik upright. I love the matchup as the whole. You mentioned it, Texas's defense against Clemson's offense. I think Phil Maffa is obviously limited. He's going to try to give it a go with the shoulder. I don't think he's going to be able to be the Phil Maffa we're used to seeing. That's going to put it all on the shoulders of Cade Klubnik. I love the improvements of Texas's secondary was the thing that maybe got a little bit overshadowed because the front seven was so good. But with Jahdae Barron in the back, Andrew Makuba going up against his former team, I think they're going to just shut down Clemson. I mean, to your point, Dave, at some point you got to look at what the numbers tell you. And that Texas defense, to your point, they haven't played a bad game all year. Offensively, Quinn Ewers is going to turn the football over. It is what it is. Can he limit it to one? That's all I'm asking. Just limit it to one. He's probably going to turn it over. Even if it's not him, some ball is going to get tipped up, right? I saw it a few times this year, right? Vandy game, ball gets tipped up on the opening drive. It is what it is. It's funky. It's wonky. I don't know why, but it just seems to follow Quinn. That's okay. He can still throw 3-4 touchdowns and have that one turnover. No big deal. Just don't let it turn into a crooked number when it comes to the turnovers. I love the way Trey Wisner's been running the football game. Clemson ranked outside of the top 70 in rushing defense. You're going to have to pick your poison, because if they sell out to stop Wisner, I agree with you, Dave. I think that Quinn Ewers can have a big game. I think they can hit some shots down the field. This isn't quite what we're used to seeing from the Clemson defense. I'm going to put it to you simply, because I do agree with you, Dave. I don't think it's just going to be like a 50-0 game. Kind of when you painted the score, Dave, it kind of reminded me, I thought my mind went to when I watched them in Austin play Kentucky, how that game just sort of trudged along, and it's like, oh, yeah, they won by, was it 17 or whatever it was, or 19 or whatever the score was. Bottom line is this, though. Clemson did back their way in because of the system. They backed their way in because of the conference winner, whatever bullshit, and they don't deserve to be here. I think they're going to get exposed. I think karma's a bitch. I think Texas, is going to throttle Clemson. I do. I like, it may not be a 50-0 final score, but I think Texas is going to roll in this one. I don't think Clemson, again, deserves to be in this spot, and I think they're going to get exposed, rightfully so. I think the Longhorns pull away late, big win, double digits, cover the spread. Give me Texas 30, Clemson 13. I think DKR will be rocking. Texas will want to make a statement. They're going to have a nasty taste in their mouth after that Georgia game, and I think they will roll over the Tigers and send Dabo Swinney and company home early. Texas 30, Clemson 13.
So we got to give a lot of credit to, I think, Cade Klubnik and how he has improved since the start of the year and how he's looked since last year. A lot of people thought that he was going to be another DJ Uiagalelei project. He's looked better. He feels like he has taken over control of this offense. He feels like he is a perfect fit for what Garrett Riley wants to run. You also got to give a lot of credit to what Texas's defense has done, specifically in the secondary. They are the best secondary in college football this year. That's not me saying it. That's not Chris saying it. That's numbers backing it up. They have been one of the most dynamic lockdown units on the back end, and that's a major testament to having a Jim Thorpe Award winner in Jahdae Barron and having Andrew Makuba come on in to take over for Jerrion Thompson. They're not allowing explosive plays. Their pass rush is potent. Their run defense lost two of the best defensive linemen in college football, and instead of getting quality of players, they got quantity of players who have a little bit of quality to their game. I think this game is going to remind me a lot of week one when Georgia and Clemson played in Atlanta. Here's the question. What version of Clemson are they? The Clemson that lost or the Georgia that found a way to respond in the second half? This is going to be a lot of explosive plays, but unable to capitalize inside the red zone where you settle for 3 points. This is going to be a lot of moments where you're going to see Texas put big-time shots down the field to Matthew Golden. They get a couple of 18-yard gains to DeAndre Moore or to Gunnar Helm, and then they're going to Bert Auburn. And it's a 9-3 feel, 9-6 feel. Very much a low-scoring performance where you're trusting that your offense will come out in the second half and you'll strike. I agree with Dave on one thing. I think that this matchup bodes extremely well in favor of Texas's defense versus Clemson's offense. This is the best defense in the college football playoff. This is the defense that is going to be the reason why when we talk about Steve Sarkisian winning a national title before he won an SEC championship, it's the backbone. It's the organization. It's the mantra. And if you're giving me an opportunity to trust a pass rush combined with a pass defense that will make a young quarterback in his first playoff game with expectations to have to be the guy in his hometown to deliver a performance, I'm taking Texas 10 times out of 10. And Texas is Georgia in week 1, where they come out swinging and you sit back and wonder, how is Clemson even able to hang around in the first half? That's a testament in itself. And it is a testament to what I think Texas will be moving forward when they play Arizona State, when that is a matchup that I think is going to be must-see television and another step in the right direction. I agree with Chris. I do think that you will see a great rushing performance on the ground from Trey Wisner. I think that you will also see it from Jarrett Gibson and Jaden Blue. I think that you'll see 2 touchdown passes from Quinn Ewers. I'm going to go even bigger than both of you. I think it's going to be 34-13 final score. Just coming out swinging in the second half, leave no doubt. Make sure that the Longhorn Nation realizes that when you depart Austin for the next round of the playoff in the quarterfinals, you are going to be the team that people are saying, if they play this version, they're almost unbeatable. 34-13 final score at DKR. Giving the Longhorns to cover, giving the Longhorns to make a statement.
So, guys, do you agree with us? Do you disagree? How do you see this one playing out in round 1 of the college football playoff when Texas and Clemson do battle in Austin? Guys, that's going to do all for us. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Again, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. For Dave Shumate and Cole Thompson, I'm Chris Phillips. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we will catch you on the other side.